All right, it is 12:05, so let's start up. My hope is that, as always, if I think something is on the screen and it's not, that you will correct me. So this is the email I sent out to you just a few minutes ago. All right. And as it says, my homework, the thing that we went over yesterday with that BMI program, it was actually correct. I'll show you where I had a mistake in my code because it was stupid. But I put in double quote instead of just one double quote. But it now works, so I'll show that to you. But first, before we do that, I want to go over the homework that is due this Sunday. I got an email from somebody who said they were confused as to what they were supposed to be doing for this Sunday. So I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to go over that exercise that we were working on yesterday, the BMI one. And finally, we're going to attempt to build our first API as a class. Now, fortunately, unfortunately, whatever you want to call it, I have keyed the stuff in, but I keyed it into a notepad file and I didn't have time to test it. So I'm hoping it'll be okay. And if it's not, I'm hoping that we'll be able to debug it. All right. As always, I have no idea how long any of this stuff is going to take. So if it takes a while, fine. And if we're done by 2 o'clock or whatever, then we're done by 2 o'clock or whatever. And tomorrow will be lab for the entire period. So let's first talk about what is actually due this Sunday. So let me go over it. And when I'm finished, if what I'm saying did not make sense to you, please, please just ask me to go over it again or tell me what didn't make sense or whatever. That's totally fine. So where is my number one here? There it is. Okay. So the first thing that's due is this thing that we did in class. And I got an email yesterday where somebody said, hey, you went over those 17 problems in class. Are those all we have to do? No. You are to recreate those 17 problems. If you do that and show me that you've got the ability to use aliases for field names and that you can use aliases for table names, you will automatically get 35 out of the 50 possible points. So yes, you will write all these. I did go over them the other day. I think that was Tuesday. All right. Then you are also supposed to do this. I want you to take that schema diagram that you were given and create 5 of your own queries. These queries should make sense. In other words, you should be joining together information from 3 or more tables where the information might actually be something someone would want. I don't want you to just grab this field, and this field when they really don't make any sense to put them together. All right. Then just give me a sentence that explains the significance of the query. Okay, use the new join syntax and do the aliasing again. If you do that, that's how you get 50 out of 50 points. The only assignment that you've had thus far has been the the gym website, and I gave everybody a 50 out of 50 on that. All right. So this weekend, I plan on grading this stuff. Now, it's not technically due till midnight on Sunday. So if I go look Sunday afternoon, let's say, and you don't have it done, it's okay. All right. But then I'll come back probably Monday afternoon or something like that and grade it. All right. Are there any questions on this first assignment? Anybody? All right. Then let me bring up the second one. All right. This is the one-page assignment. I'm not going to read any of it to you. But the question was, what are we supposed to be doing with this? I want you to create a schema for this database. So it will be a database. That database will sell 10 different types of books. All right, call them categories or whatever you want of books. Then you are to go out to this URL right here to get the information you need. What information? This information right here. For each of these 29 books that we have, that's where you can grab the title, the description, the author, the first name, etc. So the other question that got asked was, Are we supposed to literally, because that's going to take a lot of time, put all 29 records in there? No, you don't have to. Put in 3 of them is fine. Show me that you know what you're doing. All right. So if you have 4 tables and you've got 3 records in each table, that's okay. But I do want you to create the schema. And again, the schema means that what you are to create is the name of the database, the names of each of the tables, and the fields inside of each of the tables. Probably the easiest way to do that is to go into a package or a product like PHP MyAdmin and start working on it in there. All right. So with that said, are there any questions on this assignment as far as what I'm asking you to do? All right. If you are watching this on tape and you've still got questions, please feel free to email me. That's totally fine. All right. Okay, then if there's no questions, I'm going to go back to what we were working on yesterday. So give me a second here. All right, what should be on your screen right now then is the application that we were working on yesterday. All right, someplace in here, and I don't remember right now where it was, but someplace in here where I had referred to /BMI, I think it was here, but I'm not sure. I actually did this. I had 2 sets, and it wasn't there because it didn't show me an error, but it was something like that where I had put in those, put in basically double quotes twice. So what I changed was I fixed that. Then I went back and down here, I mentioned this. I did remove this if flag. Now, I probably could add it back again, but I just removed that if statement. So that if was removed, which meant that down at the bottom, that ending curly brace was removed too. All right. And I'm not sure what the problem was other than that, but it appears to be working now. I'm going to run it in a moment, but hopefully, at least, hopefully, you are to the point right now that the stuff that's in here is at least making some sense to you. You understand the types of variables that we set up right here. All right. You won't always have these kinds of constants, but I'm sure you've back from the days of AWD1111, you probably understand what those constants are. All right. These are just error messages, so nothing big there. These, hopefully you understood that. And what I did there was I tried to set stuff up so that I had my conditions over here. All right. So that anybody who was looking at this could understand what it was I was trying to do. That's why I put the comments in there. I didn't think I need comments here because it's pretty obvious. All right. And I think these were pretty obvious as well. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. All right. So actually the things that I've got here, that actually should probably go down here. So in other words, I'm not going to grab all of them, but I should probably grab this one. That's the one it probably should have went there, and then put the other ones in as well. All right. Okay. So we came down here then. This is where we had some problems the other day because you need to put in that URL encoded. Now, I did mention it yesterday. I brought up an article that was from medium.com. They claim that you can now do that just like that, and it'll work the same way. I don't know. I guess it's because I'm just so used to doing that. And I'm not going to lie to you, just so you guys know, I took a couple of Udemy classes on Node, but other than that, it's watching tons of videos online. That's how I've learned this stuff. All right. So this basically said for all of our static files, we're using a public folder, nothing new there. We talked about that before. Then we came in and we established our routes. Our first route, again, was our get route for our main page, so to speak, and that brought up the index.html. That was the page with the image on it, and it had the form on it. All right. This one right here should never really get hit, because remember that it's the app post that goes to BMI. There's no app get for it. That's why I just put a message in case somebody mistakenly types that in. All right, you got to this page in error, and I let them get back. All right, then we come to here. This is, again, we went through this yesterday. I'm doing it again because I'm trying to be complete here. All right, so that information that you see in lines 46, 47, 48, and 49, that's the information from the 4 form fields. All right, then we've got a Boolean flag that I just set to true. It is possible that inside of here it could be reset to false. So if it's true, and it will be originally, all right, we come in and we check to see if the first name was empty. If the first name is empty, we do set our flag, all right, and we just do, basically, we just whip out a message that's got that first name error. And we give them a link so they can go back to the home page. We'll look at that in just a moment. Then we do virtually the same exact thing, but instead of using the first name, we use the last name. All right. Then, sorry, I don't know why that thing keeps turning back on. I keep hitting the sound on it, but there we go. All right. Next, we validate the height. Again, there are 3 things we have to worry about with the height. The height must be numeric. The height must be greater than or equal to 12 and less than or equal to 96. If any of those 3 checks fail, as shown on line 78, we again set the flag to false. All right. And we again print out an error message. This is the out of range height, and it shows that the actual right range for it. Then this routine right here in lines 78 to 85 is the same routine as the one in lines 89 to 96, except every instance of the word height in the top one is now weight. All right, so we've got all of that stuff set up. And as it says, if we do make it down to this point, well, if we get down to here, the first name couldn't have been empty. We're not checking to see if the first name is, I don't know, it could be garbage or whatever we put in there. Same with the last name. The only true tests that we're doing in here are for height and weight. All right. So we come in and FN is our request body first name. LN is our request body last name. I don't think we'd need either of these. I think we could have used from up above here where we had set the first name and the last name. All right. Here, I did a parse float on what was in that text box. If I'd have done that up above, we wouldn't have needed this or this. Okay. So when we set the BMI and we set the BMI status, we are literally calling user-defined routines. The calculate BMI has the height and the weight passed into it. It figures out the BMI, it returns it, and then we do it to fix the 2 decimal places. For the status, it needs to know the BMI. So it needs to know, for example, if it's less than 18.5, then the status will be underweight. If it's between 18.5 but less than 25, it'll be optimal weight, etc. All right. So by that time, by the time BMI gets set and by the time BMI status gets set, we're then ready to write everything out. So as you guess, first name, last name, height, weight, BMI, and BMI status. All right. And then we put all that into a string, and then we do a res.send on the string. So here's our routines. So this is the calculate BMI one. There are different ways this can be written. I did want to show you that, for instance, this could have been written as just, I guess it's h times h, which would have been height squared. This could have also been written as math.pow h, 2. up until I think it was ES 15 or 16, you had to write it either this way or the height times height. You couldn't do what you can do now, which is just H asterisk asterisk squared like that. You now no longer you can do that now. Now that's a holdover from the days of visualbasic.net because that's been available in visualbasic.net for years. Before I started teaching C#, all right, at the campus I used to be at, I taught visualbasic.net, which again is very similar to C#. All right, then finally we went in and we wrote the calculate status, BMI status here. That was going to be our status. If the BMI was less than 18.5, you're underweight. If it was between 18.5 and under 25, you were optimal weight. If it was greater than or equal to 25 but less than 30, you were overweight. And if it was greater than 30, you were obese. And then we return that status. And this was our app.listen line. Now, not today, because I haven't had time to write it up yet, but tomorrow, all right, I am going to try to write up your homework assignment, not for this week, but for next week. That will be due the 18th. That way, if you finish the stuff that you've been assigned and you've got some free time and want to start on the next homework assignment, you'll be able to. All right, you will get lab all period tomorrow. You will get lab all period next Friday. So you will have dedicated in this class almost 8 hours for you to work on that stuff. All right, part of what I'm going to ask you to do for that assignment is I'm going to ask you to dig through my code here and actually, for lack of better words, write it the way it should have been written to begin with. There's a lot of duplicative code in here that probably it isn't necessary to duplicate. All right, so I'd like you to go through it and try to clean it up. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do, and again, you'll see all this tomorrow, is if I take this now, and if I do a file save, and if I go down to down here to my terminal, the terminal, it's up and running. So if I do come up here, it's on 8888. So if I do come back here and I'm going to change my share, back to the internet. All right, and if I come up there and I do a localhost, try that again, localhost :8888, and I hit enter, you see that it comes up, or hopefully you see it on your screen. If I do leave off the first name, there's the error, first name cannot be empty. If I just put something in there and I run it again, I get the last name error. If I put something in there, all right, and I leave out the height, gives me the height error. All right, if I put in a number there, so if I put in a value here and a value here and a value there and leave that off, you get the weight error. Finally, if I do come in and put in my information, it'll be again my dream weight, not my current weight. But if I come in there and do this and fill it all up and click compute BMI, I get this. One of the things that I'm going to ask you to do for this assignment, I already told you, that is kind of clean up the code. Another one is I don't like the way this page looks. All right. You can use Bootstrap, you can use just regular CSS, but I'm going to ask that you do something, either create an HTML table or do something where this looks better than it currently does. It's not that it's terrible, all right, but it could look a lot nicer. The other thing I'm going to probably ask too is that you try to see if you can come up with some kind of an image. So if your optimal weight, if you can, try to see if you can find the same person or the same cartoon or whatever that's got somebody underweight, somebody optimal weight, somebody overweight, and somebody obese. And I'm going to ask that you put that there. All right. So that'll all be written up and you hopefully will get that tomorrow. If you don't get it tomorrow, you'll get it on Monday. All right. So what's left then to do today, unless anybody has any questions on this, is we're going to go in and we're going to actually try to write our first API. We're going to try to hook our a database that we're about to create. We're going to try to hook a new database up, and we're going to do a couple things. First, we're going to see if we can hook it up to Node and have Node recognize it. And then we're going to download a different software package. All right. And we're going to see if we can basically make changes using this software package, which is really going to be using Node, and have it change the database itself. So with what I've explained so far as the homework, what's due, and as far as the assignment or this thing that's on screen now, does anybody have any questions? All right, then let's come in. And the first thing that I'm going to do is, I think I'm on the internet now. Yes, I am. Is I'd like us to go out. If you don't have XAMPP up and running, please open it up. If you don't have XAMPP up and running, please open it up. I'll give you a second to do that in case you need to. We're not going to be working with this classic models 2 database. We're going to create our own in just a moment. Right, so again, open up XAMPP. Make sure that you've got both Apache turned on and you've got MySQL turned on. So in here, you want to make sure these are both on and green, and you want to click the admin that's on the same row as your MySQL stuff. All right. So with that said, then, what I want you to do is I want you to come up and click the new button in PHP-MyAdmin. We're going to create a new database. It's going to be simple because with this first API, I want it to be simple. All right. And my hope is that we're going to be able to do progressively harder things throughout the semester. And then with the last thing that we do, we'll get it to a certain point, and I'm going to say, now, your project for the rest of the semester is to complete this. All right, that's what we're looking at. Okay, so the database name, I just called mine employee DB. One word. Run those things together. If you really think you have to have it capitalized, then capitalize it. But I've got the word employee all in lowercase and the D and the B in uppercase, because DB is kind of a standard, for lack of better words, for database. So employee DB, click create. All right, and now you should notice that you've got a new database here that's called employee DB. All right, so I want you to click on that database to open it. And as of right now, there are no tables in it. So we're asked here if we want to create a new table. Yes, we do. And I just called mine EMPS, EMPS. All right, and it will have 5 columns in it. All right, so create a new table under employee DB that is called EMPS and that has 5 columns. Then click your go button. All right. The first field, as we should do all the time, will be ID. It'll be an int. It'll automatically make it 11 for us, so that's not a biggie.
Mr. Chuck?
Yes.
I keep getting an error trying to open MySQL up in XAMPP.
What is the error?
It says MySQL shut down unexpectedly. This may be due to a blocked port.
It's possible that I believe that this tries to run on 8080 and you may have something else already on 8080. All right. Now, in order to fix that, and I'll be glad to look all this stuff up for you because I've got it written down someplace. What you have to do is you have to go into one of your initialization files where it's set the port up and you've got to change it to a different port. All right. If it's okay with you, if you're okay with just watching for now. All right. In fact, otherwise, let's see. Now, this the one that I've got someplace, I'll have to look at it, look for it, but that I've got was not Stack Overflow. It was just a regular article. Those don't look familiar, but it could be one of those too. But what it'll say is if this is already in use, it says you've got to run your server at a different port. All right. So what they'll tell you is you're going to have to go into one of your initialization files, and where it says, for example, in here, port equal 8080, you can see they've changed it to 9090. You're going to have to do that. Okay. Or as it says, you can try to kill the server running on port 8080. The problem with that is that could be your operating system and that could be something else. I don't know what's running because everybody's got different stuff running on their machines, and everybody has different ports that stuff runs on. But my guess is that's what the problem is. I'll try during the break to find that article. All right, and I'll send it to you because they gave really good step-by-step instructions on exactly what you were supposed to do. All right. Okay. So with that said, try that again. Come back in here. Let's go. Here we go. And in here, not there. Where are you? There you are. So in here, I've got ID. All right. And I want it to be an auto increment field, which automatically makes it a primary key. You can have only one auto increment field in any MySQL table, and the system automatically assumes that's a primary key. Now, we didn't have to call this ID. We could have called it employee ID or something else. You'll see most times that people either call it ID or underscore ID. It varies. I mean, everybody's different. Sometimes people will come in here and put in 11, which is the default length. But even if you don't put it in, I was not going to put it in just to show you that it'll set it to that anyway. All right. So we've got 4 fields. The first one is first name. It will be a varchar. And I didn't know what size to make this, so I took all of these and just made them basically 50. So it's a varchar of 50. Then I had a last name, which was another varchar, which again was 50. Next, I had a department that I just called DEPT, which I made another varchar that was 50. And finally, I had one last field that I called salary. All right. And I came in here and I made it a decimal. All right. I tried putting numbers in here and it didn't like it, so I just kept it like that. So there should be 5 fields in here. All right. Our primary key, which is called ID, which is an integer. Make sure that you've got the AI for auto increment checked. All right. And your primary key as well. The other thing, you can do this. You don't really have to. But, as far as the stuff that's in here, all right, if we wanted to, we could work with the nulls, but we're not really allowing any nulls. So that's why I left it the way it was. So we've got a first name that's a varchar, max size 50. I would think that's big enough for anybody's first name. A last name varchar, again, of 50. A department name that I made 50. If you don't think that'd be big enough, you could make it 100 or something else. And finally, a salary field that I made type decimal. Any questions on that? All right. And the storage engine should default. It should be set up to InnoDB by default. All right. So just click save. And now we've got a table. All right. So the next thing I did was I wanted to add a few records in here. So when we actually go and we do start working on this stuff, we'll actually have something that we're able to look at. Okay. So you know this as well as I do, that there are many ways that you can do this. I just as soon come and do it from in here. You don't have to do it from in here, but I'm just going to insert into emps. Then we have the first name, the last name, the department, and the salary. All right. And then values. And I put everybody in the class in here. Maybe that was stupid, but that's just what I did. So I said, Jeff Scott IT, and we'll put in 50,000. All right, put that in there. All right, and I'm just going to copy this because I'm going to put a couple more in there. And if I have any errors, it's going to tell me when I run this when I click go. Okay, it didn't get pink, so that looks good. Then I came in and added, I did add one for all of you, but I'll just do it like this. So I put in here James Wharton, and let's just put in here, I don't know, web design, and he can make 60 grand a year. You can put in anything you want. I'm going to put in 4 fields. You can put yourself in there. You can do any way you want to do it. All right, but I wanted there to be at least 3 or 4 records in there. So there's another one. All right, let's put in Clayton. And if this really bugs you that I'm using your names, just let me know and I'll just change it to something else. All right, we'll say here UX design, and you can make 70 grand a year. All right. And then finally, we'll put in one more, and John, that can be you. All right, let's say you also work in UX design and you also make 70 grand. We'll just leave it like that. All right, now just to verify that that's in there, all right, I can browse and there they are. So it looks to me like I've got 4 records in there. It looks to me like those records are all okay and they're all correct. All right, okay, so the next thing I'd like you to do is, unless you've got this in there already, and you'll know in just a second, but to go out to Google, and I'd like you to type in JSON formatter Chrome. Now I do have it loaded already. JSON, JSON space formatter space Chrome. And when you click that, it'll come right here. As it says, it makes JSON easy to read. So if you click on there, it's basically going to ask you, mine says remove because I already have it. All right, but if you don't have that, it'll basically say add it and it'll add it to Chrome. The reason that you might want to do that is that it takes something that looks more like this. Well, they don't actually give a good example in here. It'll pretty up the JSON that we get back. So again, please add the JSON formatter. All right. That should just literally hopefully take you a matter of seconds to do. Hopefully, while I've just been rambling, you've already done it. All right. So with that said, then I would like you to John, did you get kicked out?
Yeah, I did for some reason. So
Okay. I hope it's nothing I did, but I don't know how I could kick you out and not kick out Clayton. So we'll see. All right. So I just said that what I'd like you to do, if you missed that, did you see the database that we created?
yeah, I did.
Okay. So I said I'd like you to go and go into Google and type in JSON formatter Chrome, and then just click the first link, and yours will say here something. It should be like install it Chrome or something like that, and click that, unless you've already got it installed. That just can pretty your JSON up that shows on the screen. It doesn't show it in a raw format. It shows it actually in a format that looks more like this, as opposed to all the fields laid out one after another on one big line. So that's the first thing that we did. Then I want you to go back to Google again, and I want you to type in Postman download. Now there's different ways that you can download this. I'm going to recommend that you just do the Windows, and again, don't worry if it says 32-bit, it'll be fine. You can download Postman as an extension of Chrome. I've had problems using it off of Chrome. So I just went out to the regular Postman website and did it from there. All right, so as it says there, if you go into postman.com/downloads, you should hopefully find it. All right. And someplace in here, there you go. There's a Windows 64-bit. I've got it already, so I'm not going to download it. All right. In fact, mine's probably old, so let me just take a quick look. I'm going to look on my control panel. And I'll double check. Maybe I don't have it, but I think I do. Yep, I've got it. And it is a year old. So I'm going to uninstall it and reinstall it. All right, that was it. It's already uninstalled. So I'm going to click Windows 64-bit, just like you would do. Right mouse click on here and tell it to open it when it's done. We're going to use this not right away, but we're going to use this fairly quickly in here. Okay, just so you know. All right, let's see what we got here. This should be another one of those things where we just put in if we have to do anything else. Oh, it's already up. So it's successfully updated on mine. This is what it's going to look like when you bring it up. Don't worry about what anything in here means. We're going to go over all of it in just a bit. All right. If yours doesn't look like this, it's probably because mine just did an upgrade. All right. You're probably doing a whole install unless you had Postman already on your machine. You should be able to accept every install that, or every default rather, that's in there. Should be fine. All right. And just do it as you can and don't worry about it. Again, we're going to look at that, but we're going to look at that after our first break. All right. So when we start to work on this stuff, let me close this, okay? When we start to work on this stuff, what we want to do now is we want to create an application program interface. What do I mean by that? We want to be able to write ourselves, we're going to create a brand new project, the Node project, in just a moment, all right? We want to be able to create this new Node project, have our own app.js file in there. We want that app.js file to connect to this database. And we want to be able to use Postman. All right. We actually don't need Postman when we're just looking at one record or we're looking at all the records. But when we want to delete records or we want to insert new records or we want to update records, you can't do that directly from within the browser like you can when you're looking for records. All right, that's why we're going to use Postman. There are other packages, just so you're aware of that. I'm trying to be complete here. There's another package that's like Postman, all right, and it is called Insomnia. Why they called it that, I'm sure there's a funny story behind it, but that's what it's called. There also is another one. I'm not going to show you this right now. I'm not going to show you this right now, but there's another one that you can run right out of Visual Studio Code. It's called Thunder Client. The reason that I'm using Postman instead of Thunder Client is A, Postman works in any environment, and B, I have on occasion, last year when I was teaching this, I showed students Thunder Client. And after a while, almost all of them reverted back to Postman because sometimes you put in the right stuff and it just didn't work. So I'm not bashing the product. Plus, I haven't used it in a year. So maybe if there were problems with it, maybe they've been fixed. I have no idea. All right. But we're going to try to connect to this database. And what we're going to attempt to do then is to look at all four of these records inside of Postman, look at a single record based on the ID inside of Postman. In fact, we'll do those first without even using Postman. Then we will do them again using Postman. Then we will attempt, you can grab your record, you can grab any of the records. I noticed accidentally, John, I put your name in here incorrect. So when I do an update, I'm going to update John Start to John Stark. All right. So I will show you an update. I will show you a delete. All right. So, and I will show you an insert where we can add yet another person into this database. All right. if we can get that stuff done, basically that's what I had prepared for today, because this is one of those days where I had absolutely no idea how long all of this stuff would take. None. All right. So let's do this. I'm going to have to change my share. All right. But what I would like you to do then is to go into Visual Studio Code, please. And I'm going to do the same. There it is. Now, I am going to, hopefully you see Visual Studio Code on my screen right now. I'm going to do a file and I'm going to close my folder because I'm going to create a new one right now. We're going to have very few things that we're creating in here today, just so you know. All right, but I'm going to come in here and do a file, and I'm going to say open folder, and I'm going to make a new folder. So I'm going to go to my desktop, and again, I'm just going to call this, I don't know, Node MySQL. All right, so I'm going to come in here and create a new folder that's going to be called Node MySQL. That's it. I'm not going to put any, there's no uppercase in it. There's no nothing in it. Just Node MySQL. All right. It says we already have one. So I must have already created one with that name. All right. So I'll change it around. I'll call it MySQL Node. It doesn't matter. If you had one that was called Node MySQL, it doesn't matter. All right. So this is what I want, is that, and it's empty. So I'm going to select that folder. There it is, and it's empty. So to start with, we're going to do a lot of the stuff that we have been doing. What do I mean? I want you to go in and go to Terminal, New Terminal. And again, I'm using the terminal here, the one that's built into VS Code, just because I want you to be able to see everything I'm doing without having to constantly change windows back and forth. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and do my npm I -d, and I'm going to put in nodemon. In fact, before I even do that, let's do our npm init. So npm init, there won't be a lot of real fancy stuff in here. I'll just do the -y. So just do an npm init -y and hit enter, which will build our package.json file. We'll go in and we'll make some changes to that in just a couple minutes. But I'm going to clear the screen. Now I'm going to do my npm I -D nodemon. And when I hit enter, that's going to build my node modules folder and my package lock.json file. All right. So we've got that done. Next, I'm going to download 3 packages. Now, I actually put body parser in here, even though I don't think we need it. So what I'd recommend you do is when we get done, all right, after we got, we're going to install body parser now, but after we get done, try to uninstall it and see if the program still works. So I'm going to, the npm install, we're going to install 3 things. And you can install multiple things at one time. You just have to space separate them. So Express, MySQL, and body parser. Okay, so those 3 things: Express, MySQL, and body parser. I will tell you, I'm about to hit enter, yes, but before I do, that there is very good documentation out under npmjs.com or .org or whatever the heck it is on MySQL and body parser. All right. I think they each have their own GitHub page where the code is in there, followed by some very lengthy explanations. Why am I telling you that? Because one of those explanations that we're going to use when we connect to MySQL is something called multiple statements. And when we do that, you might look at it and say, what the hell is multiple statements? I could give you a very quick little down and dirty answer, and I will, but if you want to get more in depth on it, you'd go out to the MySQL page. I think the one on GitHub, but I don't remember if it's the main page or the one on GitHub. But not only do they explain that, but they give answers or examples, I should say, on how you do these different CRUD operations. And that's what we're doing right now. We're writing a CRUD API. All right, so I'm going to hit enter. All right, you can see it added 74 more packages. So again, my node modules file is really big. All right. I'm going to show you something now. I just want you to see this because this is something we're going to be doing later. We can do it right now. All right. We can do it right now, but it's something we're not going to be using for a bit. And I'm going to clear my screen first, and I'm going to go over to here, and I'm going to add a new file. So right under the actual MySQL node, or if you called yours node MySQL, do that and put in there .gitignore. Now, you might have noticed when you've gone out to github.com and you've created a new repo that they give you the opportunity to put a gitignore in there. Typically, when you're working on a Node.js project, you do it like this. Okay, we're going to have two things in here. Okay, so there's the new file. Make sure you put the period in front of it, .gitignore, and we're going to put in here two things. One is our node modules, so node_modules, and the other one is something that we have not even started putting in here yet. So you don't have to worry about it, but just put in env. Don't worry about it right now. We're going to talk about it at another time. But these are going to be files. All right, these are going to be files that when we go and upload our project and we upload it to the internet, we do not want these files to be uploaded. Why? Well, again, with the node modules, it puts a lot of bloat in here. Okay, you can do this. I'm going to do it behind the scenes, so you won't see me doing this. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to quickly jump out to the desktop, and the program we just created, the MySQL node, I'm running the properties on it, and it says it's 4 meg, right? Which is not humongous, you know that. But if I right mouse click on my node modules folder, it's 4.02 meg, and 4 meg of the 4.02 meg is just in node modules. So by basically using gitignore to tell it not to load node modules, I have shrunk the current size of my project down from 4.02 meg to 72.9K. All right. And as you'd guess, as your projects get more and more complex, and as your node modules files get bigger and bigger, it's not going to be out of the question that if you write something that's big enough that your node modules file could be up to 100 meg or more. Even that you can say, well, that's not that big. But remember, you've seen this before, at least I think you have, and if you haven't, shame on me. But I can come in here to my package.json, and I have in here, in my package.json, I've got my dev dependency of NodeMon and my dependencies, body parser express and MySQL. So if I come in here, let's say I did it on purpose, or let's say I accidentally remove this node modules folder. So I'm going to get rid of it. Delete. It's gone. It says, are you sure? Yes. All right, now it's gone. To totally reproduce it, all I have to do is, again, I have to come down here to my terminal and type in npm I and hit enter. What happens now is it goes in and it reads the JSON file. And it says, oh, you need NodeMon, body parser, express, and MySQL. So it loads them. They're back again, and all 96 or 100 or whatever it was packages, those are now there. All right. Okay. Again, I'm not saying like, oh, isn't that cool or whatever? No, but I just want you to see that. That's all. All right. So I'm going to close this now. I'm going to close my gitignore. I'm going to do a file save first and then close that. All right. And now we're going to come in here, and remember, in our package.json, it defaulted to index.js. I like to use app.js. It doesn't really matter if you do this or not, but I just, for completeness, like to do that. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a new file, and it will be app.js. We'll get it started. Give me about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're taking a 15-minute break. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to make our constants. And we got 4 of them. So const, the order in which you put these constants, of course, does not matter. Const express equals require express. const body parser equals require body parser. Const MySQL equals require MySQL. And finally, const, let's just set up a port. All right. So const port equals, well, again, we're not going to push this out to the internet. So let's just put in here, I don't know, 9988. If you don't like that one, pick your own number. It doesn't really matter. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we want to say const app equals express. All right. You've seen this before. I've at least tried to go over with you what's going on in these lines that are right here. So hopefully everything that's there so far makes sense. Also, you'll notice when you look, line 1, the word express is not grayed out. In lines 2, 3, and 4, body parser, MySQL, and port are grayed out. All right. We're going to put a little bit of code in. At 1 o'clock, we're taking our break. So the next thing we want to do is we want to come in here and we are going to add some middleware. And again, what is middleware? It is software that literally runs in the middle. It is in between Node and your application. It's extra information that you typically provide to NodeJS, because quite often what it does is it'll allow you to do in one or two lines of code that are in built-in middleware functions what might take you dozens, if not hundreds of lines to key in on your own. All right. So we're going to do an app.use here, and we're going to use body parser. Whoops. I think it's body parser dot body parser dot JSON. All right. And don't worry about what this means. You're going to see all of it in action in just a little bit. All right. One more thing that I want to do, and I guess then we will take our break, and then let's do our app.listen. We will listen on our port. We will put in an arrow function that will just say console.log, again, which will print to our console down here. And I'm just going to use template literals to say app is now running on port, $, and then in curly's port, and my backtick. Okay, so just like that. All right. So we'll do that, do a file save. I forgot to tell you before, and maybe you've already done it. Go back to package.json, get rid of the test line, change this to our start. And this will be node app.js, need a comma, and then we'll do our dev start. And this one will be nodemon app.js. So make sure you put those lines in there under script. I got asked in the past, not in this class, but somebody asked me last year, does that hurt to leave that test line in there? Of course not. But we're not doing any extra testing. There are testing tools that are available. Typically, we don't have enough time to go through them in this class. All right, if you wanted to go back in and change any of this, add a description, come down here, put in your name, etc., you can do that, but you don't have to. All right, then let's do a file save. All right, I'm going to close this. Under my app.js, I'm going to do a file save. All right, I'm going to go down to my terminal. I'm going to clear the terminal, and I'm going to type npm run dev start. And if I get my message here that says app is now running on port 9988, that's good. That's where I should be. All right. So it is 1 o'clock. We're going to come back at 1:15, and we are going to write 4 different routes. We are first going to attempt to connect to the database. After we do that, we're going to come in and write a route that will allow us to to view all existing users. Then we'll write another route that will allow us to view just one existing user of our choice. And we can look at both those and run both those right from the browser. Then we'll go to Postman and we'll run them again just so you see the difference. And then we will write 3 more routes. We will write a route to delete a user. We will write a route to insert a new user, and we will write a route to update a user. All right. And I tried doing this a little bit differently. And that is, I actually wrote some code inside of PHP And if you don't know what I mean, you will by the end of class. All right. I need a water. I'll see you at 1:15. All right, it is 1:15, so I'm going to start back up again. All right. The next thing that we're going to do, and I want you to make sure you're placed right between your app use line and your app listen line. So I want you to come down there. All right. And here we're going to set up the connection. We're not going to actually connect. We're going to set up the connection to MySQL. All right. We're going to, or we could say attempt, but you get the idea. So let me type this in. It's about 6 or 7 lines. And when we get done, we'll just break it down. All right, so I'll give you a second to key all that in. You can space this out any way you want. So if you're anal like I am and you want all this stuff to line up, you can do that. It doesn't matter one way or the other. If you want just a single space, that works fine just as well. All right, so hopefully you can listen if you're still typing. The word con that's in there is one that's often used. Sometimes people call it MySQL con. It doesn't really matter. It's what we're using to make our connection. The reason that that's important is as we come in here and we're doing our queries, which we're about to do in a few minutes, it'll have to be con dot something. All right. So you can call it whatever you want, but con, CO with 1 or 2 N's, connection, MySQL con, whatever you want. We're running this right now off of our own machine. Okay. If we were actually hooked up to the internet, that host would be different. The user might very well be different. You don't typically run things as root with no password. That is the way our system is set up. The reason you don't typically do that is if somebody breaks into your database, they could at least potentially do bad things. All right. So we've got that. So we're localhost root. We're running with no password. And the database that we have is employee DB. And I want to mention something to you right here. Don't do this. But I'm going to, if I could, if I wanted to, I could remove that line and then literally go in and create the database in my program here. And after the database was created, then come back and add that line back in. Now, why does that matter? Well, you have to realize in some ways, when you graduate from Rankin Technical College, you're a little bit ahead of a lot of people. What I mean by that is there are a lot of people who are employed as programmers that don't really know databases. There are a lot of database people that really don't know programming, but you've had at least some of each. And the reason I'm telling you that is, in my humble opinion, it is easier to create the database in a separate package like PHP MyAdmin and then bring it in here as opposed to creating it in your program. All right. Plus, if you create it in your program, you've got to make sure after you run it and it has been created that you either remove that code or you comment it out. Otherwise, it's going to keep trying to create the database again and again and again, which wouldn't make any sense. All right. So now we will attempt to connect to the employee DB database. Okay, so we set up the connection, but now we're actually going to try to connect. And it's actually pretty simple. All right, we're just going to call the connect method, but we have to pass an error. All right, why? Very similar to the stuff we've talked about before. We could have an error any place in here. We could have the wrong host, the wrong user, the wrong password, the wrong database, etc. So it's possible that we could get an error with this. Again, I wrote this entire thing this morning, but I just went and put it into Notepad. I'm not sure it's going to work, but if for some reason it doesn't, I think it will. But if for some reason it doesn't, I'll work on it, and we'll look at it again on Monday. But I think it'll be, hopefully it'll be okay. So con.connect. So con.connect, and really, again, we can have a possible error in here. Okay. So either way, it'd be kind of nice to let the user know either A, we are connected, or B, we're not connected. All right. So I came in here and said, if there's no error, so if there was no error, just do a console.log, and I just said connected to employee DB database, exclamation point. Again, you can put anything basically in there that you want. All right, else we had a problem. All right, so I did another console.log, and I said error connecting to database, or something along those lines. Again, error connecting to database. If you want, you can put the name of the database in there. So I can just come in here and do this. Come on, Jeff. Get rid of this. There we go. All right, so that's what we've done. Okay. If you look at my terminal, notice what I now have on here. Oh, I should have said connected, but that's okay. So connected. All right. And it's restarting now. App is running on port 9988, connected to employee DB database. So we were able to connect. As long as when you go and you create this, you basically set it up the way we set it up in here, you should be able to connect. As long as you got a database and you put in the right host, the right user, the right password, and the right database name, typically, again, you should be able to connect to it. Now, again, just be cognizant of the fact that if we were running this not on our machine, but on some other machine, all right, that if their server was down, no, you wouldn't be able to connect. So you just would get the error message. Okay. All right. So now we're ready to actually start writing some of these paths in here. Now, I keyed them in, then I wrote them, but I can't even read my own writing very well. So I'm going to come in here and just start putting the stuff in here. And if you say, I don't know what you mean, you will in a second. So I'm going to say here, establish route to view all employees. Remember, this is an employee database. All right, so I'm going to copy it in. Why? Because I don't want to screw it up. I make enough errors with you guys anyway when I try to key in stuff. So let's see. Here's the first one. I'll give you time to key that in, but before we do, if you would, just take a second and let's look at this. Don't worry about, you'll have time to key this in. But this is going to say that when we go to /employees, what should happen is it should select everything from our employees or our EMPS table. If you didn't call yours EMPS, this is the table name, not the database name. So if you did not call your table EMPS like I did, put in the name you chose. This can return an error. This can return all of the data. And you can, if you want to, just specify certain fields. If there is not an error, we're going to want to on our screen show everything. Otherwise, all right, there was some kind of an error. Whoops, why am I doing that? Let's see, we need this. Oh, I just put in one line. You know what? This is a weird quirk on the editor, because I put in curlies here and I put another curly in there and I put a curly here and my ending one here, but they were removed. Again, you know as well as I do that it's not mandatory that you do that, put that in. All right, when there's just one line of code. So I'm going to shut up for about 5 minutes. It's 1:26. We'll pick it up at 1:30. Please key this in right now. All right, it's 1:29. Hopefully you had enough time to put that in. Otherwise, I'm leaving it up there, but let's just go through it. This says that in just a couple minutes, we should be able to go out to the internet, and we should be able to do a localhost colon whatever number we used, which was 9988 /employees, and we should get a listing of all of our employees. All right. And getting that listing of all those employees, all right, it will come up in JSON. So let's try it. So I'm going to do a file save all. And just so you can see what I'm doing here, I'm going to change to the internet. And then after I do, all right, let me change my share. And there I am. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do my localhost :9988/employees. And there are my employees. So those are the ones that I added. If yours looks like this, all right, that's why I had you add the JSON formatter tool, because that's raw JSON. But if you click the parsed, that's parsed JSON. You may have different records in there than me. It doesn't really matter. All right. But you should have at least 4, like I do, with a first name, a last name, a department, and a salary. All right. Hopefully you were able to do that. You didn't have any problems. If you did, please bring something up to me. Now, again, if John, if you're still having problems getting your database done, I can understand that. I did send you a link during the break for an article that's got 3 different ways to try to fix that. It's very similar. I couldn't find the other article, but it's very similar to that one. All right. Now, I want to show you something else. All right. I didn't know the order in which to do this, but I just decided to do it in this way. And that is, I'm going to come down into my search bar down here, and I'm going to type in Postman, and I'm going to start up Postman. Okay. You should have had time by now to have your Postman stuff all loaded up, etc. And it's funny, it used to let me make this bigger when I used the flywheel on it, but it doesn't like that. But what I want you to do is up here it says get. You should be able to see that. All right. And it's got get. If I click the down arrow, we're going to look at get, we're going to look at post, we're going to look at put. All right.
Mr. Scott, mine
Yes.
is not working for some reason. Like it's
You're-
running and it says it's connected to the employee DB database, but
Okay.
when I go out and run it, it just says cannot get.
All right. I'll tell you what, watch what I'm doing.
Okay.
And then we're going to be done here probably around 2 o'clock. And for both of you, you know, let's just stay online and then you can share your screen with me and we'll see if we can figure it out. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Now, what do I want to change in here? Well, it's not 5 in here in this URL. It's not 5677. It's 9988. So I've got here http://localhost:9988/employees. And if I click send, there are my employees. So that's the same thing in Postman that you just saw on screen. All right. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I do want to say it again, and that is that you with what we just looked at out on the internet on the screen where we had the thing where I showed you the JSON formatter, that will only work for viewing either one record or for viewing multiple records. Viewing. But anytime you want to be able to do any manipulation, either an insert or an update or a delete, then you have to use Postman for that. So we'll have to go back to Postman. All right. So it's good. All right, at least you've seen it on mine,
Oh,
and
Mr. Scott, I got
hopefully
mine
we'll
to
get
work
it
now.
up and working on all of yours too. All
I got
right,
mine to work.
you did. Okay,
Yep.
what was the problem?
I just missed a comma in my code.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So I'm going to now, I don't know if it is, do you see the internet on my screen right here? In other words,
Yeah, we do.
all right, you see these records right now, these JSON records?
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing we want to do is, this is fine, but I mean, what if we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of records? We want to be able to just go in and grab a single record. All right. So I'm going to show you how to do that next. And it is, as you might guess, it is very similar. The route is very similar to when we grabbed all of the records. So let me change my share here. I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code. All right. And now we're going to have get an employee record. So I'm just going to highlight this entire thing. So in other words, I'm highlighting the entire the entire route for all employees. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, and right underneath it, I'm going to paste it in. All right. So I'm going to change the comment to get a single employee. All right. Now, just so you know, all right, because some people are real picky about stuff and some are not. If this works, we're only going to get one record back. So many people change that rows to row. You can leave it at rows. You can make it row. It really and truly isn't going to matter. We're not done yet, but I just wanted to mention that to you. All right. So what we have to do in here is something that's a little bit different. All right. So we don't want to just select star from emps because, as you know, that'll give us everybody. All right. But we want to select star from emps and we want to add where, let's see, ID equals underscore ID. Okay. And where do we get that from? Well, we've got to come up here in this line. This is telling us to get everybody. So we've got to come in here and do a colon. So we'll do a colon here, underscore ID. Whoops, sorry. Colon underscore ID. So again, what we're asking for now, what we're asking for is just one single employee. All right. Now, where this stuff is, I'm going to hit enter here and put this on another line. You might say, well, why are you doing that? Why are you putting it on another line? Because there's something else we want to put before this. When you go in and do this, when you've got, okay, and I screwed up. That should be this. Make this a question mark, and I want to explain why. So where ID equals question mark, and get rid of that. Just make this ID. All right. This is a placeholder. Okay. And it's a placeholder for what? We have to tell it what it's a placeholder for. Okay. What's going to happen is, if you remember earlier, we used that request thing, that REQ. And when we used it yesterday, we did an REQ dot URL. Well, we don't want to use that now, but what we want to use instead is we want to create an array because we can ask for a bunch of stuff. req.params.id, and that, put a comma in there. So I'm going to let you put all that in. All right. I'll give you a second to key that one in, and then we'll go over it. When you get done, do a file save, please. Again, you will notice if you look in here, okay, now it's giving me errors and now it's restarted because I had some mistakes. That's why I told you yesterday, some people like to keep their terminal window open while they're keying in additional code. Some people don't. All right, I can't see your screens, at least right now anyway, so it's your call, basically. All right, I'll give you another minute or two to finish typing that in. All right, so going over this line by line, you can already see what's new here. Since we only want one employee, all right, you've got employees, and yeah, it's me, so I made another mistake. put a slash there. So it's employee slash. So if we want me, I'm employee 1, when we run this, we're going to go to localhost 9988/employee/1. And that should just bring up me, for example. All right, I think, John, you were number 4, I think. So if I put in /4, it should bring you up. All right, now I'm going to explain the other stuff in here. If you want a better explanation than I've given you, go out and look at the documentation. Again, when we run this query, we're saying where ID equals placeholder. That placeholder is a placeholder for this. Why would we want a placeholder in there? Because when we run this program, we want to be able to go and search for different employees. We don't want to hard code something in here. All right. So later, when we go in and we do an update and we do an insert, you're going to have a whole bunch of those question marks in there. All right. So that is being represented for this. And again, either we can get an error, or we can get the rows, or we can just print out certain fields. All right. We're saying if there was no error, send us the row back. And again, like I said, if you want to, you can make that singular and make that row and that row. All right. It's, when you start to write this stuff, it's what you prefer. All right. That should have restarted the server, and it's up and running, and it says I'm connected. So again, I'm going to go out to the internet. Let me change first. Let me change my share to the internet. All right. And I'm going to actually just close this. So I'm sure I'm starting with something new. And I'm going to say localhost colon 9988/employees/4. And you'll notice, even though John's name is spelled wrong, I get John. Now, what you may or may not know is I've got 4 employees. What if I put 27 in here? I just get back an empty array. And that's its way of showing me there is no employee 27. All right. We're going to do the delete next. And when we do the delete, all right, we're just going to give a message to say that it's been deleted. Now, that said, I'm going to come back in here. Let me change my share again. I want to bring up Postman. So I'm going to change my share another time here. And I'm going to go to Postman. All right. And with this in here now, I'm going to ask for employee 3 up here in my line. It's still a get, and I click send. And you'll notice I get Clayton's information. Now, there's some important stuff in here. Hopefully you can see my screen, or you tried doing it yourself, but there is some important stuff in here. What do I mean? Well, first of all, you can see it says status 200 OK. That meant it worked. The reason I'm telling you that is if it didn't work, you should get a different number other than 200. We talked about this before, that typically if you get a 400 error, it's an error on your side. It's in your code. If you get a 500 error, it's an error on the server side. So there's some kind of a software error where typically there's not going to be anything you can do about it. All right. But again, you saw it now. If I come back in here and I put in a 1 and click send, it should be me. And indeed it is. So we've now gone through, and both on our system and on Postman, on both of them, we have viewed all employees and we have viewed a single employee. All right. So the next thing to do is to delete an employee. All right. So let's do that right now. So I'm going to change my share, and I'm going to go back into VS Code in just a second. And I should be back in Visual Studio Code. Hopefully that's what you all see on your screens. And again, this next one isn't that different. So now I'm going to grab the whole get a single employee. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. And down below this, I'm going to add a route for that. All right. So let's talk about this. We want to delete. Whoops. Boy, oh boy, Jeffrey. We want to delete a single employee now. All right. That's where we are here. So I'm going to change the comment to delete. And for the first time, we've done a get, and we've done a post, but now we're going to put a delete in here. All right. And for that delete, we are going to leave in this. You don't typically set up a delete route where you can delete everybody. There are other ways of doing it that are better than doing it through here. Okay. All right. We have to make just a few superficial changes in here. All right. So this becomes delete from emps where ID equal question mark, comma, request.params.id. All right, then error, row, and fields. Now, we don't want to send this anymore. We're going to do a console. Actually, we can do a send here, but we're going to end up saying record successfully deleted. Right? Now, if for some reason it didn't work, all right, I can append onto here if I want to, so I can say problem deleting record. All right, and I can put a \n in here and say plus error. So I'll get both my message that comes up that says problem deleting record, plus I should get the error. Both of those are going to appear then, or this one's going to appear in the console. We're going to run this in just a minute, but we're going to run this one in Postman. All right, I'm going to delete myself. All right, you do whatever the heck you want to do. But the other thing to realize is once I'm deleted, all right, then ID1 will be gone forever from this database. All right, because I'm ID1. If you put me back in again, I become ID5 because there's 4 records in there right now. And I've had people who've told me, oh, you can go back and you can override that. And even though it's an AI field, you can go in and you can add it yourself manually. Don't do that. You are asking for trouble by doing something like that. All right, I'm not saying that it won't work, but it's just a bad habit you don't want to get into. All right, so that's the delete. Hopefully I've made no mistakes, so I'm going to save, and I'm going to jump right into Postman. So again, let me change my share here. All right, I'm in Postman. Now, the first thing you want to make sure you do is you change this from a get. You click the down arrow and you choose delete. All right, now since I've already got number 1 up there, and that's me, okay, there's actually 2 tests I can run to make sure that this works in just a second. But I'm telling it now that I want to run a delete request, and I want to run it from this port, and I want to run it on that table on that record. So I'm going to click send, and notice it says record successfully deleted. Well, I want you to say then, you know what, that's fine, I don't believe you. So we can come back up here again, change our delete back to a get, and try to show all employees and send it again. And now you'll notice my records are 2, 3, and 4. In other words, number 1, me in this case, has been removed. So in our APIs so far, we have gone in and we've been able to view all records, view a single record, and delete a single record. All right. So what's left is an insert and an update. And one thing I want you to understand, because it may or may not make sense, all right? One thing I want you to understand is when we do an insert and when we do an update, in a way, we're doing the same thing. The only difference is if I'm going to update this record, let's suppose for a second that James's record right here. All right, all the stuff that's in here, we cannot change his ID because that's read only. But let's say that I put Jim in there instead, and I've never heard anybody call him Jim. But he says, no, it's James. Not only that, you spell Wharton wrong. Not only that, you spell design wrong. All right. So if I want to go in there and I want to change everything, let's just say, it's almost like I'm inserting a new record. The only difference is that I'm changing an existing record so it already has an ID. Whereas, all right, whereas when I go in and do an insert, it doesn't have an ID. All right. And I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but it just, there are certain things I just want to make sure you understand. All right. And going along with that, so you're like, fine, why'd you tell us that? Because what I did was I went in and I wrote my own routine that's going to do this. If the ID is equal to 0, it's going to be an insert. In other words, there is no 0. If the ID is not equal to 0, it's going to be an update. But I wrote one routine that ideally, if I made no mistakes, all right, we are going to be able to run this one routine after we put it in, all right? And yeah, there's a little more typing that we have to do in here, but it's going to be smart enough that to use our logic and either do an insert when we run it one way or a delete when we do it another way. Now, you're like, fine, what if I don't want to do that? We still would have to write two routines, but we would end up duplicating a lot of the logic that's in there. So I tried to write this so we wouldn't be duplicating a lot of the logic that's in there. All right. Now I'm going to do a screen share change right now. So I'm going to change where my screen is. I'm going to go back to the internet for a second, because this is where I wrote this morning, but it has not been tested. So let's see. I'm going back out to the internet, and I went and searched this morning, and eventually I found that was the one I sent you, John. So let's see what else is in here. All right. That was a different one that I didn't like as much. And that was the run. So let's see. Somewhere in here, I'm going to find the article I'm looking for. There you go. So how to create what's called a stored procedure in PHP MyAdmin. What a stored procedure is you're actually writing code inside of PHP MyAdmin that you're going to be able to run repeatedly. You say, well, that's what we've been doing. No, basically the stuff that we've been running has been node code where we had the logic. This is going to be actually PHP code. All right. And I've done this before, but I've only done this before through SQL Server. I've done it through SQL Server on an SQL Server database. I've never before done it on a MySQL database, but I thought it would be a neat thing to at least try to show you how to do. Now, you'll notice it was first asked 9 years ago, last modified 7 years ago. So there may be a better way of doing it because this answer now was in 2015. All right, so there may be a better way, but we're going to try doing what they say here. So I'm following this, and I'll send you, if you're interested, I'll send you the URL. So it says you can easily create procedures in PHP MyAdmin. So this is what I'm going to do. So they want us to go to the database and click the routines tab. Again, I'm just going to jump back and forth here. So I'm in my database. All right, if I make this smaller, and if I click on the database itself, so employees DB, there's routines. I clicked on the database itself, and there's routines right there. So that's the first thing I'm doing. I have never done this before. I'm hoping it works because I think it's cool. And I'd rather show you something, even if it doesn't work, and see if we can fix it, than not show you something. All right, so let's see. We've done that. Click on the add routine. I'm going to do this unbelievably deliberately. All right, well, there's no add, but there's an add routine there, so that's fine. So I'm going to click on that. This does look a lot like the picture. All right, what do I mean? Well, this is what we want to do. Okay? We want to create a bunch of parameters in here, but I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think we're going to have to do it like this. All right? Why? Because it's kind of a pain in the butt to add one and then add another one, then add another one, etc., like that in there. I'm not saying this won't work, but I think there's a better way of doing it. So we're going to try my better way. And if it doesn't work, fine. Then we'll come back to this. All right. So I want to come up here and I want to give it a name. I want to use the name that I used. And that name is called employee add or edit. Again, I tried to come up with a name that would make some sense. All right. So going back in here, the routine name, I'd like you to please put in there, as it says, employee add or edit. All right. But what we're going to try to do here, again, this may not work, and it's okay if it doesn't. But what we're going to try to do here is, rather than putting these in manually, I've already got them in here.
Mr.
All
Scott,
right. Yes.
how did you get to that add routine?
How did I get to the add routine? I went in and clicked on the name of my database, and then over on my options that are up here, there was one that said, what was it? Was it routines? Yeah, it said routine or add routine. There was a hyperlink there that said add routine when we did that.
Okay, yeah, I got it now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to put this in here. All right. And I'm going to give you the code. Again, this may not work this way, but I think this is a better way of doing it. All right. So 25 lines. All right. And I'm going to give you plenty of time to type it in, but I'm going to put in those lines right there. I'm going to go back up to the top, and I'm going to try to see if I can make that bigger. Looks like I can. And can I drag this? All right. There's the beginning of it right there. Whoops, right there. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this. All right. It is 1:57. We would normally take our next break around 2 to 2:15. So I'm going to give you, if you want to take a break now, that's fine. But at 2:25, I'm going to pick it back up again. That should give you plenty of time. After you type in these first 16 lines, there's 9 more. All right. So please type these in. I have no idea, like I said, if I've got any mistakes in here. We might want to not put a number in there. We might just want decimal, because when I created it, I didn't have a number in there. So it might look like that. That's probably correct. All right. And notice I used underscores in here and I missed one on salary. So let's put it in. And I'm using underscores in my checks in here too. We'll go over all of this stuff in just a couple minutes. If you think I've made a mistake, then just kind of make sure that you look at it and say, and then ask a little bit later. Okay. I'm going to leave for about 10 minutes. Not that you care, but my wife is out of town visiting my daughter who lives in Illinois. So I'm here alone with a dog, and I want to let the dog out so she doesn't do a job inside of her cage. So I'll be back in about 10 minutes. All right, hopefully you've had a chance to at least type in these first 7 lines. So let me move it down a little bit here. All right, when you get done with that, there's just a little bit at the bottom, so I'll move it up to here. All right, if you've got that, the only thing is these two lines here at the end. All right. And we'll go over what everything means in just a few minutes. All right, so taking it back then from the top, we're creating a procedure. These are all going to be passed in, so they are input parameters. As you'd probably guess, there are three types. There's ins, there's outs, and there's in-out. So if we were passing something in that didn't have a value, it did not have a value, and we were attempting to set it inside of this routine, we would then pass it in as an out parameter. All right. This is an in parameter, meaning none of these are changing. All right. When I say none of them are changing, so wait a minute, you're saying an update except no. All right. The data that we're passing in isn't changing. We may be changing the values that are in the database, but the data itself is not changing. And an in-out would allow us to both read something and change it. So we come in here, it's all within these begin-end blocks here. So we begin, and this is making the check right here. If the ID that we passed in is 0, there is none. So it's an insert. So this if right here that you see right there, that'll handle the insert. Because there is no ID, so we are inserting into our EMPS table the first name, the last name, the department, and the salary with those values that we just passed in. We still, even though in here we're showing an underscore ID, we're not passing that in. All right, because it's an insert, and then the auto increment is going to take effect. All right. If we get down to the else, then it's an update. And you know how to do updates. We've looked at them before. So it's saying update EMPS, set the first name equal to whatever, the last name, the department, and the salary. This should work even if we don't change all the fields. It should revert back. So if we go in there, for instance, if I just change John's last name from Start, that I put it in incorrectly, to Stark, and do it with this after we write some code, it should make that change, and the other fields should stay as they are. All right. So hopefully you've had a chance to put that in, because what I'd like to do is give you the code for these last two things. We'll go over it. And like I said, hopefully there's no mistakes. But before we do that, I'm going to look in here. So we added the routine. It says, then click go.
Mr. Scott, when you go back, what did you use as your routine name?
Okay, no problem. Employee add or edit. That's the same name that I used at the beginning when we chose add new routine. It asked for a name. The name should be the same. I don't think they're case sensitive, but I'm not taking any chances.
All right, thank you.
Sure. So looking back on this, it says that's it. Then click the go button. It says that's it. You can view the created procedures under the routines tab. So let's look. So I'm going to come back to here, and I'm going to click the go button. Now it says missing value in the form. Okay, well then hopefully it'll tell me what that value is, because I don't think I'm missing anything. I'm going back and I'm checking this against what I had originally. I thought I had everything in there. Missing value in the form. First name, last name, department, and salary. First name, last name, department, and salary. We're not resetting the ID. No, that's not good. I guess it wouldn't be a class period with me without some error, but I thought that this was totally correct. I'll tell you what, if for some reason, I'm going to click go again, I'm sure I'm going to get another error. It says missing value in the form. I'll figure out what that is. That's not a problem. All right. But for now, at least, I'm just going to keep this here. And when we finish today, I'm going to see if I can get it to work. But what we should be able to do is to go back into VS Code and put the code that is associated with it in there. So I'm going to go in and stop sharing. I'm going to start a new share. I'm going to go into Visual Studio Code window. All right. And I'm going to just, what I want now is my insert a new record, or insert a new employee, and update an existing employee. So I'm going to come down to here and I'm going to insert a new employee. All right. Rather than copying that, there's enough differences. Like I said, I've got it over here right there. So there's the lead. There it is. And this is going to look pretty ugly, but we'll go over all of it. And hopefully once we do, what we're doing will make some sense. All right, so let's see. All right, so start typing that in if you would, please. All right, and we will go over it. I realize you can't see that stuff at the end. I can't get this thing to hide. Whenever I tell it to hide, it always comes back again. So just start typing that in. When we get to line 74, I'll move over so you can see the rest. All right. Oh, I see an error. That might be what the error is. Oh, I did that. I originally had just a name field, but then I decided to change it to a first name and a last name. Okay. All right. So let's just suppose you've just typed in this so far, which is fine. You'll notice, first of all, it's a post. All right. Because again, when we are inserting data, it's going to be a post. All right. And it's /employees. We don't want to put an ID number in there because we're about to create, possibly, either create a new employee with a new ID number or update one that already has one. But this is our create part. All right. So we let emp equal the request body, which has in it what? It has the ID in it. All right. It has the first name, the last name, the department name, and the salary. So this, you can call this whatever you want. I mean, this is a new employee, so I could have called it new imp, but I just called it imp. All right. This is SQL because that's basically the query. And as it says, this is where we use that multiple statements thing. This allows us to put multiple statements together. So I'm setting the ID equal to question mark. I'm setting the first name equal to question mark. I'm setting the last name equal to question mark. I'm setting the department equal to question mark. And I'm setting the salary equal to question mark. All right. And then there's a forward or a backslash at the end. So I'll let you put all of that in, and we'll come back and we'll continue on. So again, I'll move this over in a second, but what we have in here so far then, we're inserting a new employee, so we want to do a post. It'll be /employees with our request and our response. Then we're letting emp equal the request body. Emp is just an alias, so we don't have to say here, we can say emp ID, not req.body.id. So this is just an alias. This is the name of the query itself. All right. So it's the same names that we had, but we put an @ sign in there. Why? Because that's the syntax of these. So @ID equals question mark, @first name equal question mark, @last name equal question mark, @DEPT equal question mark, and @salary equal question mark. After each one of these, you put a semicolon and you use the word set, and you before each name you put the @ sign. All right, why? Again, because that's the syntax for doing this. All right, so I'll move that over so you can see that. This backslash line right here says that this is actually one line. It's a continuation character. All right, hopefully you have that. I'll move this back then so you can see the rest. And here, maybe it'll make it a little easier. I can hit the enter key here. That might make it a little easier to see. So do not hit the enter key in here. All right. Set it up the way that it's been set up, please. So what this is going to do in here, right there, all right, is it's going to let us be able to go in and add a new employee. All right. Easier to read. This one we're not going to be able to test because since I have an error in the procedure, this won't run because we'll be calling a procedure that technically does not yet exist. Sorry about that. I will try, I promise, as soon as I get done today. All right, and I'm hoping we're going to be done somewhere around 3 o'clock. I'm going to go look at it and see if I can figure out what the problem is. Let me move this down so you can see the rest of it. That's it.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
I got mine done.
You what?
I got mine written down.
So this is done?
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah, I
All
just
right.
finished mine.
Okay, good. All right. Now, then what we'll do is we're going to copy this whole thing and we're going to put the update underneath it. It's similar, but it's not the same, of course. So right underneath that, I'm going to add the update. All right. And actually, I've got it written here. I should probably do it like that. So this will update an existing employee. Let's see if I made any mistakes in here. First name, ID, first name, last name, department, salary, ID. Again, I don't know. Originally, like I said, I was going to call this, just have one thing in there that was called name, and I didn't like the way that read, so. Salary, good. So let me just clean this up a little bit, and then I will show it to you. Okay, should be okay, I think. So we've got our insert. I'm going to change that. I'm going to remove everything I just copied in there and just put this whole thing in there. So this is update an existing employee. All right. And you'll notice this time it's a put. So we have now looked at get, which allows us to view information. We've looked at post, which allows us to add new information. We've looked at delete to allow us to remove existing information. And we've looked at now put, which allows us to update information. Okay, I'll let you work on that. And I'll move it over again in just a minute. Whoops.
Mr. Scott, did all you change is just put?
What's that?
Did you just change the word post and just put there?
Yes.
Okay.
And you'll notice that when we did this one, we said inserted new employee, and we'll actually give it the ID. And here we're just saying successfully updated employee. We could do the same thing if you want to, and we could add the element 0 ID. I think that would work. So if you want to say what employee was updated, I just left it like this. This is it though, as far as the code goes. So I'll give you time. We should finish this in 10 minutes or so, and that'll be it for the period. Sorry that I had a problem. I would suggest you go back into PHP-MyAdmin, grab that entire procedure that we wrote, save it as a text file someplace. All right, it doesn't even, you can either save it in the project we're working on or someplace else. But as soon as I figure out what the problem is, I'll let you know. All right, but I don't want to see you have to type in 25 lines again. That's a waste of everybody's time. I will double check all of my code too. All right. And if I find out anything is an error, I will let you know. What we are going to do next week, just so you know, is we're going to write a bigger project. All right. I'm not sure what yet. I'm looking at a couple things. I wrote one. I really didn't like it. I don't even want to go over it. So I'm going to try to write something else this weekend. So we've got our app put, our let app. This should be almost the same line we had before as far as all of our set stuff. All right. I'm trying to think if there's a lot of differences or not, except the big difference again is we're now doing a put. All right, so it knows that this is an update. And again, you can just give me a shout out if you need anything moved over or when you're done or whatever. Because that, like I said, that's what I had for today. I did not have any idea how long this would take.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm done.
Okay. Hopefully you found the explanations good enough that you're able to keep up and you understand what's going on. All right. This is a simple example. What we'll do in this project that we do next week, we may do one more simple one, but eventually we're going to do one that's a harder example. I've already kind of been working on one that's got a simple to-do list on it. But the problem is with a to-do list, that was what we were going to do originally here instead of this one. But with a to-do list, it really only had an ID and then a to-do. That was it. So it was even simpler than this was. So I was looking to do something that had a little more meat in it, so to speak. All right. Are you both done?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So hopefully you were able to see everything that was over here. All right. And again, I will double check my code and we will go over this first thing on Monday. All right. Tomorrow will be a lab day, as mentioned. You're welcome to sit in. All right. I will be online. Nothing will be taped, etc. This tape should be out there by no later than 4 o'clock, I think. All right. Thanks for showing up, and I will see you guys on Monday.